Hi, everyone. We're just going to get the session started with a land acknowledgement, and we'll start it right now.
In a spirit of gratitude and humility, and in recognition of the enduring richness and weight of a troubled history, we gather today in this place of Congress, acknowledging that the place on which we stand is located on the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the traditional home of the Anishinaabe, the Wendat, and the Haudenosaunee peoples. This territory lies within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement from time immemorial between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Anishinaabe, and allied nations to peaceably share, care for, and steward the resources around the Great Lakes. May our conversations today be infused with the same spirit of sharing, caring, and mutual responsibility expressed in that covenant. Today, this meeting place continues to be the home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to gather today on this land to promote a spirit of harmony and pursuit of a better future. We recognize the historical and ongoing contributions of Indigenous peoples to our society and to all societies around the world, the historical and continuing injustices that Indigenous people endure, and the need for justice, truth, and reconciliation.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this afternoon. My name is Evelyn Vanderhoof, and I'm here representing the Glenn Gould Foundation. We are so thrilled to have you join us for the Promise of Music. It is the first time that we are running this World Congress, and we're thrilled to run sessions both in TMU Pod 250 as well as the Chrysalis. So please make sure to check out both spaces. We will be using this space today as well as on Friday. So just note that in your calendars. In terms of the organization itself, we are named after Glenn Gould, an incredible landmark figure in Canadian history who is a lauded pianist, a celebrated figure, and a pioneer in terms of his approach to music and technology. So please, if you're not familiar with Glenn Gould himself, please make yourself aware of him during this week, and please enjoy the Congress as we are so thrilled to have you all here. Today we are going to be joining me today is our lovely panel, the SIMM panel, on essential skills for musicians facilitating social and community music projects. We are so thrilled to have the SIMM organization in partnership with our Congress. They're doing exceptional work. Dr. Lukas Pairon, who's moderating this panel today, can speak more to that as well, but we're so thrilled to have their partnership in this. I'm going to set this first speaker up, Irina Kirchberg, who will take the stage. So I pass it off to you, Irina. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you hear me? Yes, it's okay. So I'm very happy to be here, accompanied by my 3-month-old daughter. And despite the lack of sleep, I didn't want to miss the chance to take part in this exciting event. And I'd like to thank the organizer for the warm welcome they have given us. I'm a researcher in sociology and musicology, and also co-director of a university training course for musician mediators. In other words, musician mediators are teaching artists or musicians wishing to develop musical practices with a social aim. At the same time, I run a research network in music mediation, which enables me to work with European university and conservatoire who are facing the same challenges. The music job market has undergone profound changes, emphasizing the social role of artists, and our teaching method should take this into account. Tout va bien pour là, jusque-là? Parfait. Over the last 10 years or so, in Quebec, Switzerland, France, and Austria, the vocabulary of music mediation has become omnipresent among music producing and presenting organizations, which are attaching increasing importance to outreach and social intervention through music. This can be seen in the diversification of concert offerings, by organization, which now offer programs for a variety of audiences and vary the format of their cultural offering by investing in the field of participatory projects. To describe this transformation of the music world, some even speak of a big bang in music mediation. In this context, many higher education establishments are creating training courses for musician mediators. This is the case with my colleague at Vienna University of Music in Austria and the Conservatoire National Supérieur de Paris and Lyon in France. And when we meet, we never cease to be amazed at the differences in our training curricula. During this discussion that will take place in a moment, perhaps will we see different points of view emerge on the minimum requirements for musician mediators. My academic colleagues and I yes, discuss the following issue. What core skills should community musicians develop in order to take on the new roles and challenges required by changes in the musical world? Given that our students' time capital is limited, what skills should be essential if they were to become agents of social change and encourage authentic participation by all in music life? Although training courses for socially committed musicians are multiplying, to my knowledge, there is no document that exhaustively summarizes the know-how at the heart of the work of this socially committed musician. I'm not saying that no text exists in the field. Numerous articles and books describe the work done by this musician. However, they do have some limitation for anyone wanting to get an overview of the reality of this profession. I hope you agree with me. We can talk about it. Some focus on the particular aspects of the work of this musician, discussing power influence in contemporary musical social practice, or the role of affective atmosphere for community music practitioners, or the ethics of care in community music. Others analyze only the skills of a certain type of musicians, the skills, attributes, and knowledge for group singing facilitators, for example. Some others focus on specific areas, presence, healthcare, and working with specific audiences. In short, we don't have a global vision of what it takes to be community music maker. At the request of 3 higher music education institutions, my team and I are working to build this skills reference framework in music mediation. To produce this reference tool, we carried out a series of consultations in Quebec, Switzerland, and France with music mediators and representatives of the cultural and socio-community organizations that employ them. Each consultation brought together more than 50 people working in a variety of fields and with participants from a variety of backgrounds. The people attending this consultation worked together to complete an outline structure around a 4-pole grid, which I will talk about in a moment. The participants were then asked to identify the portfolio of specific persona skills that we had created. Each persona worked in different environments and according to different models of participation. And a graphic facilitator drew the results of the participants' discussion live on a giant fresco to fuel the discussion and debates that took place at each table. We also analyzed over 100 articles and books devoted to analyzing the training and working conditions of these cultural intermediaries in order to identify the vocabulary most commonly used to describe the work of the teaching artist. All the skills identified were organized according to the order in which they appeared in the discussions and the frequency with which they were used. It was on the basis of these 2 variables that we identified the relative importance of each skill in the reference framework. Tout va bien? Yes. I don't look at you because I focus on my text, but usually I'm more friendly, but it's very difficult for me. The analysis of this data is still in progress. It's a long-term project that I've been slowed by my recently maternity leave. Nevertheless, at the present stage of our work, we can present the portfolio of skills of music mediator musicians in the form of a pyramid. This pyramid is made up of a skills base. These are the skills that were most often and quickly mentioned during the consultation. They are shared by all the musician mediators, and I will tell you about them in a moment. The specific skills required for the practice of music mediation are built on this foundation. They fall into 4 categories: musical skills, management skills, leadership skills, and audience knowledge skills. In these specific skills it is these specific skills that reflect the specific nature of the musical environment and testify to the particular profile that needs to be created in order to implement music outreach activity, not painting outreach activity or theater activity. In addition to this group of specific skills, there is a third level of skill linked to the mediator's ability to be part of a continuous learning process. Each level of these pyramids opens into conceptual maps. This enables the know-how of each major family to be broken down into the skills to be applied. It's okay. When we analyze the data, it turns out that what brought this community musicians together were the convictions they held and the stance they adopt. During the consultation, the participants always addressed this theme first. This includes both the political and ethical dimensions of this practice and the convictions and objectives of cultural mediation as a whole. It was on the basis of these skills that they defined the boundaries of their profession as intervening musicians. Even before talking about the musical or facilitation skills needed in this musical project with a social impact. The participants gave details of the people skills, decision-making skill, and interpersonal skills that they consider central to their work. It is this work ethic shared by the profession as a whole, whatever their field of intervention, that has become a common base. Now let's talk about the specific skill of musicians involved in socially oriented practice. The list of skills mentioned here show that the artistic career of musicians involved in this socially committed project are shaped by this project, where mastery of a field of musical practice is no longer enough. The musical skills cited by the people consult describe a complete musician with a performer, arranger, orchestra conductor, and a choir conductor, as well as a musicologist. During the discussions, the participants systematically discussed the notion of musical excellence. They pointed out that the musical excellence traditionally conveyed by higher education institution training, mono-instrumentalists, needed to evolve. In the discussion, the participants noted that in addition to their excellence in a specific register of the musical field, socially committed musicians had to be capable to approaching music from multiple angles. For them, this was the benchmark of musical excellence in a context of social transformation. This reflection on the many ways of understanding music led to a discussion on the animation skills needed by musicians. The participants detailed the knowledge that enabled mediating musicians to modify their discourse according to the audience, to stop to respond to a reaction, to reformulate an idea if it doesn't get through, which requires the ability to listen and adapt quickly, to be at ease with the spoken word on stage, and to be open to the unexpected, which makes for a lively and interactive experience. The skill associated with getting to know the participants came up quite spontaneously in the discussion, mixing theoretical and empirical knowledge of audiences. It was a question of knowing how to listen to the group, but also how to interact with them and encourage their participation. Disciplines such as psychology and sociology were evoked. Next, the participants in the consultation spoke of the project management skill needed to practice their profession. In their description, the musician mediator also became a project manager. This is where the self-entrepreneurship of the profession makes itself felt. This means knowing how to communicate and promote their project, but also knowing how to coordinate team, carry out administrative tasks, negotiate partnerships, etc. And finally, at the top of the pyramid are the skills that are generally discussed at the end of consultation and during informal gatherings. The people consulted stressed in the importance of lifelong learning in their career path. Being part of networks, participating in communities practice, and keeping abreast of new projects were all prerequisites for maintaining a socially and musically relevant practice. The question arises as to how higher education institutions such as universities and conservatoires can respond to the need for continuing education mentioned by the participant. Once diplomas have been awarded, how can these institutions really support the career of musician mediator? I think my colleagues have some solution to this. While we have not yet finished analyzing our data, the list of skills mentioned is impressive. The skills framework clearly shows the richness of this profession, which in French-speaking world are unfortunately not yet fully recognized and not really valued in academic curricula. This is why the reference framework aims to become a structuring document for the professional representation. This reference framework aims to help professionals in the music world to identify higher areas for development when they wish to include music mediation in their professional portfolio. This skills framework tool should help to guide trainers in the creation of specialized music mediation courses, and this document will also be helpful for guiding recruiters in drawing up coherent and realistic job profiles. Thank you for listening to me. I will be delighted to talk to you about this forthcoming skills framework in French if you have, if you can. But I can. Thank you very much.
Merci, Irina. Ta fille est pas bien.
Elle est parfaite.
So, when I listen to Irina's presentation, I wonder how it's possible that this field of community music is developing. Like you're even talking about a big burn. Mm-hmm. Because when I listen to you, I kind of hope that musicians who are keen on becoming facilitators of such projects are not reading your research, because I mean it's like enormous what the talents that you need to have or that you were supposed to have, and so that's my personal reflection. Yes. Maybe I should, before giving the floor to everybody here with me, I just want to present myself. So my name is Lukas Pairon, and I'm the founder and the director of an international research research network, which is called SIMM, which is the abbreviation of Social Impact of Music Making. And we exist since about 10 years, and we organize sessions, seminars, research seminars we bring together scholars who are doing research on what can be the role of music in social and community work. And so that's why I'm here also and presenting these 4 different sessions the coming days. And so Sebastian, I would like to each of you shortly present yourself to the audience and tell them what your work is in connection with community music projects, and
maybe also first reflections on what Irina would say.
Great, thank you, Lukas. Thank you, Irina. Thank you all for coming. I know we had competition from Little Buck next door. If you didn't know that, you can still run over and catch the end of this presentation. So my name is Sebastian Ruth, and I am here from Providence, Rhode Island, in the States. I would say the roles that I play that are relevant to this topic, one is I founded and run an organization there in Providence called Community Music Works in 1997, started. And the work there is a community music project basing the ongoing residency of a professional chamber music ensemble in and with an urban community. So the musicians perform and teach and organize community events in collaboration with students and families. In that organization, for many years we have had a fellowship to train young musicians in the methodologies and values of what it means to be a community-embedded musician. For many years that was mostly people coming out of colleges and conservatories, fascinated by this kind of work and wanting to do it alongside us for 2 years. In recent years we have changed that fellowship to be eligible to alums of our program who had grown up as musicians with us, and now are coming back as young professionals to learn with us. And then the other hat that I wear and that I bring to this conversation is as a teacher at the Yale School of Music in New Haven, where for over 10 years I've taught courses about the connection of musicianship and public service. And in that role, I get the opportunity to work with people who are mostly career-bound conservatory students, but who are articulating interest in community-engaged work or socially impactful work. And my challenge is to broaden their lens. And I really appreciated the triangle as an image for the types of skills, and particularly the base of the pyramid, or the common core. Because as I interpret it, as many of the things were bullets in your presentation, but as I interpret it, there's a widening that needs to happen for people who are trained in conservatories to be very proficient professionals, as to what actually is artistic practice. And there's so much, so often a frame of the concert stage as the place I go to perform. And one of the very powerful influences, I think, for students is the work of John Dewey, who wrote 90 years ago in Art as Experience, that actually, in order to think about the meaning of art in our world, we have to start by erasing all of our associations of where and how art happens. And this was in 1934, and it's still so relevant. But he says, even the construction of concert halls and museums and opera houses already assumes a certain kind of rarefied experience that usually has very little to do with the experience of the art. And actually we have to look more toward community ritual, toward our biology, toward our spiritual lives, toward ritual practices that go back thousands of years to understand actually what music means. And that's, I think, my first task with students is just, let's start by unlearning what we think the practice of art actually is. And then it changes the form. This will be my last remark, and then I'll pass the mic. But it changes the form from a fully established concert career with a side gig teaching children or working in a hospital. And it changes it to say, actually, what is all this training for, and where does it belong? And it removes a little bit the hierarchy of this is the established professional opportunity with prestige, and this is a side thing, but it really changes the value structure.
Thank you so much, Sebastian. So I want to give the floor to Pierre Vachon from the Opéra de Montréal. And you're also very much involved in community work. Please tell us about it.
Yeah, that's right. Why am I here? Existential question. I think I do have both hats, two hats actually as well, because I was asked many years ago to build to develop something called civic impact or community engagement program at the Opéra de Montréal, where I work. I'm a director there of the civic action and education, and so I've been focusing on hiring artists to be able to build and to reach out to communities. The only question that my director asked me was to reach out to all communities. So how do we do this? We're dealing with so many people and all the marginalized and vulnerable and everything, and medically fragiles. And so how do we reach out to them? So that was one question about that. And so I started to build the program at the Opéra de Montréal. And secondly, I was fortunate enough to be able to work with Irina. I was also a guest visiting professor at the University of Montreal. So because of her, I was actually there to reflect on what qualities are necessary to do that, to build community engagement program and social programs and everything. And so this is why I'm here today, trying to reflect and bring some of the ideas that but one of the ideas actually, I like the ideas that you have to do tabula rasa of everything. But one thing that surprised me, and that I'm still surprised after 10 years, is how artists themselves have to forget that there's more than just a career, and that doing mediation, what we call mediation or teaching artists, like you say in English, well, this is a career. This is something noble as being an artist. So we have to switch the kind of the mindset to be able to do what we do. So this is one of the ideas actually that comes out very strongly. Wow.
Thank you so much. So Tricia Tunstall and Eric Booth, you're both involved in developing this wonderful the Ensemble newsletter, and Tricia, I would like you to especially to speak about that, and I will ask Eric then to tell us about the project AIM. Yes, please,
Yeah.
please.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lukas. It's such a pleasure to be here and so exciting to see the work that you're doing. My connection with this subject goes back to 2009. I am a piano teacher, a music educator. I've taught music in schools and colleges, and in 2009 I discovered El Sistema, and that's what brought me into this. I knew nothing about this whole field. That's what brought me into the field. And I would say that the work that Irina is doing and the things that we're going to be talking about today are so crucially important for a lot of reasons. As I watched Sistema, I studied Sistema and wrote a book about the Sistema in Venezuela, and it spread to the United States, and then Eric and I wrote together a book, Playing for Their Lives, about El Sistema around the world. And one thing that we very frequently, almost always found in the United States, and very frequently in other countries too, was that the teachers for El Sistema inspired programs were classically trained, conservatory trained musicians. And when kind of plunked into the very different world of a music for social impact program and of a Sistema program, they were flummoxed. They were at a loss. They absolutely were at sea. And that's when I began to understand how much retraining, radical retraining would have to, those young teachers would have to go through it in order to be able to accomplish the aims of the programs, the SISTEMA programs and the Music for Social Action programs that they were running. That process has been happening slowly but steadily over a number of years. In the US, conservatories have not paid very much attention to it. There's very little opportunity for a young person to get trained in a conservatory or even in a university for these skills. But there's much more on-the-job training, much more extracurricular training, so this is coming slowly. I want to give a special shout out to the ensemble, our newsletter. Eric and I started this when we started our research for our book about worldwide SISTEMA in 2011. We decided that all of the programs are very disparate and distinct programs around the world that had somehow been inspired by the spark that El Sistema put out. They needed to be connected. They had no way to be connected. They were usually short-staffed, busy with their heads down, didn't know who else was out there, had no idea that there was a global scene out there. And so we started this newsletter as a free monthly e-newsletter, and that's the way, and we sent it to not only programs that were explicitly started by El Sistema, but also, as we expanded our readership, we included all kinds of projects for community and social change, and all kinds of teaching artists who called themselves participatory artists or community mediators or social practice artists. All of those amazing people, struggling people throughout the world are now on part of our readership. And what we've learned from, and are in the process of learning, from soliciting articles, all the articles are written by practitioners, by either the program directors or a teaching artist or even a young talented student in these programs. And we try to, in every issue, include a program at least on at least 4 different continents. So what we've discovered is that the practice is really distinctive across the world, but it's incredibly held together by the vision of music as an incredibly powerful tool for all kinds of social and emotional change. So I'm thrilled to be on this panel to discuss this. Over to Eric.
So Eric, please tell us, Eric Booth, please tell us about the Academy for impact of music, impact through music.
And a little background before I get there. I'm Eric Booth, and theater person amongst all the musicians of the world. And for 40-something years, I've been training teaching artists. The US term for artist mediator, musician mediator, we're dealing with here. And I have found in training artists of all the art forms, the challenge for musicians is significantly harder than it is for other art forms. That may be a story for another time, the why of that. But I got drawn into the strange subculture of music when I was invited to start the teaching artist program at Juilliard, which has led to 35 years of trying to bring musicians into social practice. And along the way, anytime I would go in a room of a music for social change program and ask the teachers, what does success look like? These are musicians who have already chosen to invest themselves in the career. I would get 25 different answers of what success looks like. So the challenge that the Academy for Impact Through Music took on, a program based in Europe, was how to focus a consistent vocabulary and definition of what are the priorities of this kind of work. And we've been able to narrow those down to a pretty widely accepted 5. Originally we had that same long list of skills up there. And in this program we've done 2 challenging things, which is distilled down to a core set of consistent priorities that all professional development and assessment is aimed toward. And second, instead of training professional development, teaching musicians how to teach better toward these goals, we train them in action research protocols so that in fact they lead their own ongoing learning rather than getting input from the outside on how to achieve those goals.
Thank you so much, Eric. Because maybe we can start with this this element, this question, the question of how can musicians who want to be facilitators in such work, how can they prepare themselves, and so I like the idea with which you stop at the end of your presentation, is to say that in fact we always learn most from colleagues, and it's anyway. So maybe who would like to take the floor?
A quick add-on before we open it up to everyone. We should note that having the heart and the gut for this work is not for all musicians, and that there's a key piece of our work which is an invitation into this world that only some answered wholeheartedly. Some may feel guilty, some might feel they should, but it's really only a subset of professional, well-trained musicians that really have the heart and gut for this work, and they're the ones we're talking about.
Yeah, so that means musicians should not, but musicians should get the opportunity to be able to do this kind of work. I feel that Pierre, you wanted to react to this, or?
No, it's absolutely right, actually, and I mean, it's like having a passion for teaching. You know, it's not for everyone. I noticed and everything. And in the course that we gave, they had exercise to do. They had to experiment, being a teaching artist in different contexts, and it was obvious that some of them had the natural skills to do it, and also the passion to do it. They need to communicate. They have these communication skills. Far away from the fact that they are good musicians, that they excel in what they do, that's fine. That's put that aside. But there's the human qualities actually that are so important to be able to do that kind of work, because you're dealing with often fragile communities, people who actually are vulnerable, and you need to be able to cope with that. So that's why I thought one of the qualities, the human qualities, more so than the artistic quality as well.
Irina, would you like to react to this?
Yes, yes. Yes, I don't want to afraid people which will read the result of the survey, but as I heard.
Let her eat first. Yes.
Can I speak in French? It will be. Can you translate what I say?
Yes, I can translate. But let's wait until she feels better. She's hungry.
Je pense que c'est comme un.
Yes, that's right. Sebastian, would you like to react to what we just are discussing here now? Yeah. She doesn't agree.
She's the star of our show, actually. I think I'm interested in your point, Eric, that this isn't for everyone, right? That this isn't sort of a mandate. Everyone needs to do this. Everyone should do this. At the same time, I think there's an orientation to this that can be useful to any artist, whether or not they commit a large portion of their career to it. Because I think at the core, what I'm interested in is that this is not altogether a different space from being an artist with impact anywhere. So if you're an artist with impact on a stage, there are, I think, a core orientation toward why are we doing this? what is the industry? How do I think critically about this industry? And how do I think of myself as being someone who can use this platform of music to communicate important things to people, whether it's from the stage or whether it's in a classroom or whether it's in a hospital. One of the things that kind of flipped the switch for me when I was a young person was seeing an image of the cellist from Sarajevo playing on the street. And there was something about him sitting in his tuxedo, and some people may know this story from the 90s, but sitting in his tuxedo as if dressed for the opera that night, but of course the opera wasn't on because of the siege in Sarajevo, and saying he was going to play 22 days for the 22 victims who were killed waiting for bread. And there was a sort of a public commitment, and he didn't do it for spectacle, although of course then there was a lot of news reporting, so it became a spectacle. But there was a kind of a private memorial that he was enacting with his cello. That was very inspiring to me, because it was like why we play music in the first place, right? It was that felt like what was being communicated through these images. We play music to memorialize. We play music to celebrate. We play music to help ourselves and others feel. And I think those core skills get a little bit lost in the values of self-promote, win a competition, get management, become a star, right? It's like, actually, let's be reminded of why we do this, and then the context, for whom we play, where we play, can come next.
Yeah, there are different ways that we call these musicians facilitating, intervening, like in French it's used a lot, intervenant, intervening, go-betweens. So and there are very different ways to intervene or to facilitate, and at very different levels in projects. And yes, I have a question for Pierre. I'm seeing that there's more and more also going on within opera worlds, opera and music theater, developing certain opera houses or music theater companies who are developing participatory work.
Yeah.
And so, are you with the Opéra de Montréal also involved in such?
Yeah, we are.
So projects which are developed really, new work which is developed with people who are not necessarily professionals, professional singers and musicians.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, we do what's called co-creation. Professionals working with non-professionals and building up collective work, and and experimenting opera, all facets of opera, and everything. So we do that as well. And one reason why we do this is what we do say to the people who come to us and say, look, let's try to experiment something together. We tell them, well, let's hear your stories, and everybody has a story to tell. Whether it's your story, whatever it is, and opera tells stories. This is the essence of opera.
Does it mean that there's new work developed?
But that's actually
taking such stories as sources?
Exactly. Yeah, we did one
new music, new
music completely. We did. We do hire composers and the bread list, for instance, and to listen. We did a few years ago a project with homeless people, yeah. And we started by telling them, says, well, let's leave our problems on the streets, and let's try to dream, and let's try to do something together. And we worked for about a year with 50 of them, and we listened to what they had to say every week. And this is how we built a completely new modern work called Humanities. And there was a composer, there was a librettist, and there were these 15 people working together. And together they composed an opera that we presented in a real context. So this is one example actually of what we do there.
So the direction of your opera is not only interested in getting bumps on seats.
No, not at all. Yeah,
It's an outreach program which
It
is
is,
not
yeah.
only meant to get new audiences within the opera house.
but still, the artistic view has changed actually. I used to be a director of marketing for the Montreal Opera for 10 years, and my goal was to just fill in the hall and sell tickets. And then came along a new director and said, I don't care about this. We have a social responsibility, and we need to give back to society. How do we do that? And doing that, art and opera can be transformative. And this is how we started doing things without the aim of having to sell tickets and saying, no, this is something else completely. And now it seems to be natural now, actually.
Yeah, with SIMM, with the research network, we're now also developing research seminars, people doing research on participatory opera and music theater. And we started at the Liceo in Barcelona.
Yeah.
They developed a big opera production entirely with the popular neighborhood nearby, and the whole opera was newly written by a composer and a librettist, but based on what they found within that part of the Barcelona city, and so it took them 4 years to develop it, and so seen from the perspective of a community work, it's very meaningful to do this, and also it had quite an impact on the house itself, because they had a choir of 300 singers from the area, and they had some problems finding space for them, but anyway, so it was together with the orchestra and with other singers and so, and so they decided after this first experience to start a new opera, and they're preparing now a new opera, and again working several years on this. And this is one example and I feel this is really developing more and more.
It is actually, and you talk about impact. The social impact is also both ways,
Yes.
because the artists themselves doing that realize how it has an impact on their own artistic practice. They haven't thought about that, and a lot of these mediators come to me. I work with about 15 mediators at the Montreal Opera to cover all the projects that we have, and they come to me and say, it has really a real impact on myself, and I didn't realize that. So it actually have them think, and their practice evolves in that way as well. So it raises awareness of their role in society. So that's one of the good impact. Yeah.
Anybody wants to react to what we were saying here? Yes? Tricia?
You push power.
What's interesting to me about what you are saying is something that's always interested me about community music projects, which is how you define community. In El Sistema Venezuela, what I saw when I went there was that there was no problem figuring out who your community was. It was your children, their older brothers and sisters, their parents, their aunts and uncles. They lived right there, they were right out there, they came into the nucleus porous, they came in every day to pick up their kids. That it was clear who the community was, and so it was easy to sort of understand what a community music project was aiming toward, which was transformation not only of those kids but of those extended people whom you knew and you worked with. And I think of System of Scotland, for example, who did the same thing in a really intensive way in the first nucleo in Scotland, in Raploch, went into the homes of their children's families and worked so intensively with those communities that with that community that we heard from a number of people in the community, including the taxi driver, that the music program there had completely changed that community. when you're talking, Pierre, about writing, sort of leading the co-creation of opera, I'm just curious about how your mediators doing that, who is their community that they're working with and toward? How would they see that?
I'll say it in a very simple way,
Yeah.
not as profound as you may think. But I mean, for us, we say opera is for all, and so everybody should be concerned by opera because it's transformative, and so the artist starts with that. So their community is both the direct participants, their relatives, everybody on the streets and everything, and all these things. The artistic community as well, of course, and so yeah, I guess that would be an enlarged community in a way.
It's a very large community.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
So more complicated, but worth a try.
Yeah.
I would like to, well, first of all, I would like you out here to think of maybe questions or comments that you want to have. So we'll pass on the microphone in some time, in a few minutes. I would like to first with you out here also look at the question of it's not necessarily always so wonderful and so easy to do this work. I mean, I'm thinking then specifically, but you could think of other examples of musicians, facilitators, musiciens intervenants going into prisons, and not only to give a concert in prison, but to really develop music projects in prison. Tomorrow morning, by the way, we have a SIMM session here. I think it's the next building, but on music, the practice of music in detention. But speaking with musicians who do this work, they are confronted with sometimes very ugly parts of our worlds, and well, the example of prison is particularly complicated for musicians who are coming in but can go out also and leave the people that they work with in that context. But I think there are most surely other examples also of community music projects where it is not easy at all for musicians to be confronted, maybe like working with people, refugees from places where they take traumatic experiences, and so you can, as a musician facilitator, also be confronted with that and have to deal with this. Does somebody want this?
I have
Eric.
a thought. When I travel encountering artists who do this work around the world, in almost all countries, there has been for a long time artists who do community work. They work in prisons because they're passionate and they know its importance. And then there's the big arts institutions that get almost all the money, that get the definition of what art is. And what we're looking at is the kind of encounter of tectonic plates that comes down to the question of what is art for in times of crisis, in places of crisis, what is art's role in this? And the pressure, certainly in the US, where we're in a crisis moment, is certainly the greatest I've ever seen, and it has the potential for an earthquake with a positive outcome, a disruption of the definitional norms of what's art, what's not art, who we give money to, whose work gets deemed excellent, and redefining what excellence is. And I think we're at that time. And one of the most useful tools I came across was done by an American research group called Animating Democracy, where they put out a document that defined 11 different kinds of excellence in terms of artists engaging with communities, noting that the one kind of excellence that the classical music mainstream defines and walks behind and enforces rather rigorously as one of those 11, but that in fact there's a whole other bunch of excellences that community-based work knows a lot about and has much to contribute, and that it takes those skills to accomplish, and that we're in that tectonic crunch when we're moving from an enforced adherence to one definition of excellence to an appreciation of multiple different kinds of excellence, of which musical perfection is one.
Est-ce que je peux pas Oui, j'ai deux remarques à faire après vous avoir écouté. La première, c'est que effectivement, on construit un référentiel de compétences qui est énorme, mais chacun a trouvé son chemin ou son personnage à construire les compétences qui font sa force pour devenir le médiateur qui sera capable d'intervenir dans une situation particulière.
So Irina wants to say two things now. First of all, in terms of the capacities needed, she says, well, everybody will find his or her way anyway, and with the capacities that she or he has.
Et comme le disait Sébastien, c'est définir son identité particulière qui est importante d'artiste finalement. Et c'est un peu l'analogie du clown. Le clown, même si c'est un métier très sérieux, mais le clown va trouver les fractures dans son identité qui vont le rendre amusant, et il va travailler sur ce petit défaut qui va devenir sa force. C'est un peu la même chose pour les médiateurs. Il faut trouver son personnage de médiateur, ça c'est la première chose.
And so, and she refers to what Sebastian said earlier on, that it's important to find your proper way and your proper personality. And Irina takes the example of the clown who is looking especially at what are the cracks in his personality, the difficulties, and to make them like the source for his work.
So a clown, is that a clown?
Yes, a clown.
Sorry.
Et la deuxième chose, il y a une enquête très intéressante qui est faite par Sarah Schacker en Autriche, qui fait la comparaison entre les musiciens qui ne pratiquent pas la médiation musicale et ceux qui pratiquent la médiation, et qui montre à quel point s'engager dans des pratiques de médiation change les conditions de vie des musiciens, donc économiques, les conditions économiques, leur volonté de rester ou non dans le milieu musical, baisse leur niveau de stress. Donc c'est très encourageant pour ceux qui nous écoutent d'aller lire cette recherche qui montre à quel point c'est enrichissant pour de jeunes musiciens d'expérimenter au moins les interventions.
And so Irina is mentioning research done in Austria, Sarah Schacker, which is showing that musicians who are developing, working in community music projects are capable of really being confronted with very impressive stress factors, and so that learning from them is really very interesting for sure for all musicians. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments out there?
So many. Thank you very much. This is really a great conversation, and also a beautiful baby. Thank you for bringing her. So my name's Ellen Waterman, and I run the Research Center for Music, Sound, and Society in Canada, and we're building a participatory arts lab, song arts lab. So I've done a lot of projects with various small communities, and your question about who's the community is such a cogent one. It's one thing to do a project with people and create space and find the funding and pay everybody well and make sure all the supports are there. And then what? We all espouse these concepts of relationality, of ongoing relations. So I thought about this in the context of your beautiful co-creation project with unhoused people. And it's one thing to ask people to leave their troubles at the door, but the troubles are still there when they leave the rehearsal or so I'm just curious to know how you deal with this problem of sustainability and sustaining relationships, and also for artist mediators, sustaining the practice in the face of both the social things and just the ordinary practical things.
Yeah. You can keep the microphone with you. Who wants to react to this?
I think it's a great question. I think sustaining the work is a financial and it's an emotional challenge. For our work in Providence, we have tried to emphasize from the beginning that what we were trying to do was establish a career trajectory for musicians that wasn't relying on volunteer hours or just the youthful enthusiasm of the practitioners, but actually could pay people a decent salary with benefits, which is unusual in the States for musicians outside of a symphony orchestra or a college. And to say like how can we define this as a location of practice that is professionally rewarding? And on an emotional front, I mean, you said about contexts that could make a musician or artist confront issues they're not equipped to deal with or prepared for. I think that's an ongoing issue. At times we have relied on social workers or other professionals who can help the teachers understand the complexity of the situation, understand how to support young people, and in some cases have a social worker available for the young people and their families. Some years ago we started a family engagement coordinator role, so someone who could be a kind of a support for families in our program and connect them to other resources so that we weren't trying to provide all things through the vehicle of music, but we could be a network of other opportunities. And I think that is an element that makes this work fragile, is that it is often the add-on to someone's career. And so finding ways to make it both financially and emotionally sustainable, I think is really critical.
I would like to add to what you just said is that there's in France there's a fantastic project I personally think is fantastic. It's called Demos. It's the initiative from the Philharmonie Paris, but it's now all over France. And what is particularly specific about this project is that there's all over the place a close collaboration between social workers and musicians. So musicians are not on their own, but they are forming teams with social workers who know the areas, who know the people, the young people who are invited to follow the music projects and to develop the music projects. And it's one way to, well, not only to be accompanied as musicians, but also to come to some form of sustainability. But I don't like to use the word so too easily, because I mean, what's sustainable about such projects? I mean, life goes on also, and especially when you think of what the example I just mentioned, this music projects in prisons.
And I was really thinking about sustainability for the people with whom we work, more than I was thinking about sustainability for the musicians.
Well, I mean, social change is hard. I mean, it's slow, tedious work with so much headwind pushing against it. My own recent naivete was challenged in a best of all possible circumstances, working with musicians who were committed. They were making their careers in music for social change, and AIM took on the challenge to actually change the way they think about their work, change their definition of success in order to change their teaching practices. And I thought, these people are already all in, so a 15-month intensive fellowship it's going to make this gigantic change in their practice, and it didn't. It made a gigantic change in the way they thought about things, in the way they aspired, but their actual practice didn't change in the first year. It didn't change much in the second year, but it did in the third year. And my naivete was such that a year of intensive, kind of optimum professional development circumstance would create this new habits of mind, and it was naive. It actually took 2.5 to 3 years for the cognitive change to turn into creative change, that you made the 1,000 decisions a teacher does based on different aspirations.
Any other?
And perhaps we are facing one big difference between music intervention and music mediation here, because in music mediation there is a word very important, which is incapacitation. The main goal of music mediation is to share tools with the participants to allow them to make alone when we will be in another place. So we give instruments or we give tools.
Any other questions? It's over there.
Really fascinating, thank you. Coming back to Eric, your point around social change is not easy and it's not fast. And just a few reflections. One is that we have a longitudinal study that's been going for the last 12 years of our programme, and one of the most helpful things that has been kind of presented in the report is 7 principles for social change based on our work, but the great thing for us is that there's no music mentioned in this. It's very much about how we do it. So longevity and commitment, quality relationships, inclusivity and accessibility, intensity and immersion, innovation and flexibility, collective and cooperative learning, and excellence, aspiration and inspiration. And I think lots of work will have a few of these that are happening at any one time, but getting the 7 of those working at the same time is what leads to this kind of lasting change. There was also a question there about musicians, and we now employ in Scotland about 140 musicians in these programmes, and actually one of the challenges we're finding is that the people who have the heart and the will to do this work, the pool is getting smaller. Scotland's quite small, so we're trying to work with the Conservatoire and our own kind of graduates from the programme to kind of develop our workforce, but we also find that in that first couple of years the work keeps going and the need is there, but we can't get it working fast enough, so we're trying to really put a lot of energy into staff development, and also supporting staff through this work. So again, taking it out of being a musician role and repackaging it as actually working with social work, picking up the phone to families is not an add-on, it's the core job. But creating time and space for that and support for the stress that puts on all staff, but particularly new graduates who are then thrown into this scenario, which takes a lot of confidence to pick up the phone, which especially these days, where we're all text and WhatsApp, and actually we evidence tells us that face-to-face connection in those early years is what makes that difference. So no question, just some thoughts, but thank you so much.
Vicky, I have a just really quick question for you back. Why do you say that the pool of people with the heart and feel for this work is shrinking? Do you have a sense of why that is? Because I have a sense in the US what that would be, but I'd love to know in Scotland.
I don't think there's one reason. I think it's the staff who we have who have been in the teaching Systema circle for a while already work for us, potentially. We don't pay as much as the music service. We do offer, various paid leave and annual leave, and we offer a lot of flexibility in staff training on beyond music and beyond. But I think the pay is a factor, and also we employ a lot of younger staff now, and that's brilliant. But often we'll get to that 3-year point, and maybe they move on to then a really well-trained teacher for the other teaching contexts that we worked in. So I think that's the reason.
Thank you. Somebody wants to? Yes. Another question?
I just wondered if you could give an example when you talked about you didn't see it manifest in the first, second, third. Can you give examples of what it looked like when it did manifest?
I'll start with what it looked like when it didn't fully manifest. One very simple exercise we do is, what do you do in the first 10 minutes? What do you try to accomplish? And we saw, earnest efforts in the second year, getting kids to speak and letting kids have choices about the warm-up. But it actually wasn't creating a lot more community, it wasn't developing agency. In the third year, they had rethought what happens in those first 10 minutes. And often there wasn't any talking happening. They had developed routines and rituals where kids were slipping right into this community understanding, and it was joyful and fun and not a lot of talking, and people didn't kind of mill around and waste time because they wanted to get into this space that they know together. So it was a kind of sophistication in how you create a community that has its own motivating energy. I know that's what dazzled me when I first went to Venezuela. In the first 10 minutes, I went into one of their nucleos where I saw the most motivated room full of young learners I'd ever seen in my life. And it is entirely possible to do, but it requires rethinking what your goals are and how you scaffold the introduction of new practices so that there's pleasure along the way and high energy challenge along the way, and a kind of belief in the pleasure of high difficulty. I mean, there are all these attributes of the work, but it takes a while to trust your way into how you can actually create such an atmosphere.
Thank you so much, everybody. I guess we're at the end of the session already, but maybe who wants to give some last remarks or? No?
I just want to say I'm tremendously encouraged by this turnout, by the interest in the subjects that there is in this room, and heartened, really, to find that this is such a alive question with so much energy and life in it. So thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
And thank you for making it happen.